Hello, if you're watching this video, chances are you're curious about the whole Nicolau situation, or you're just curious about who this person is. The purpose of this video is to summarize the entire Nicolau situation, at least up until 2021. Next time Nicolau does some shit, and I guarantee you he will, you can just share this video. I'm sure most people who are watching this only sort of know of him, or maybe if this is your first time hearing about this guy. Regardless, if you're watching this video, odds are Nicolau allegedly sexually assaulted someone again. Anyways, my name is Daniel, and as someone who has known him since we were both students at UCI in 2013, I feel like I could provide some invaluable insight. With that being said, I will preface this by saying everything I say in this video are of my own personal opinion and do not reflect on anyone else's. I did not speak for anyone else, but for myself. If you want to give Nicolau the benefit of the doubt, I think it's only fair you do the same thing to me, at least just for this video. Which is why I'll primarily be drawing information from things that have already been publicized or easily accessible to the public. You know, things like his Instagram posts, his Facebook posts, the things that he wants us to see. I will also be drawing information from previous posts that have already been publicized, as well as drawing from my own personal experiences with him. There will be times where I will chime in to directly confirm nor deny any claims that are made in any of these posts, with information that I have to deliberately withhold because the things that I know and the stories I've heard are not mine to tell. I do not want to step on other people's toes or accidentally reveal anyone's, personal information, especially if they want to remain anonymous during this whole ordeal. For example, in one of Nicolau's Instagram posts, he claims that he never shares nudes and he respects girls. I can say that this is absolutely false because I have personally seen one of these photos. Not directly from Nick himself, obviously, but from someone, a very, very reliable source who got it from Nick himself. Where else would the pictures come from? I will revisit the story later on in the video because there are more layers to this and it serves as a pretty good segue into another point I want to make. So to start off this video, let's take a page from Nicolau's own book and do this in a specific order. But instead of first trying to establish my own credibility by completely dragging someone who had nothing to do with what allegedly happened at Hard Summer, let's establish a frame of reference specifically for his character and reputation. So I met Nicolau at the beginning of the 2013 to 2014 school year. I will admit, he often leaves good first impressions. He always initially comes off as being friendly, some would say too friendly, generous, and overall a pretty upstanding guy. Then less than 2 months later from meeting the guy, the first accusations of sexual assault occurred. He was in a relationship at the time and sexually assaulted 2 friends that I personally know. Of course, he vehemently denied all these allegations and maintained innocence. By the way, he would later admit that this rumor is true in a personal conversation with me a couple months later. Initial signs of Nick always denied allegations when they turned out to be true. Since I just met the guy, I felt conflicted. At the time, I, as many others, have had good personal encounters with him, and these allegations seemed very out of character. Until it did. What's to follow is just one of many stories that I personally experienced that just shows how unsettling and scary his behavior can be. One night we're having group dinner outing with a bunch of mutual friends at Samwoo. By the way, at this time, Nick and his girlfriend were officially broken up. There were about 10 of us and we're sitting at this big circular table. I remember specifically that Nick was sitting directly opposite of his ex because they had just broken up, and he was sitting right next to me. This detail is important because near the end of dinner, he gets up from his seat, walks all the way around the table to ask our gay friend, who's sitting right next to his ex at the table, to borrow his phone specifically. Instead of asking me, who's sitting directly next to him, he did this so that he could supposedly call his mom because his phone died. Everyone immediately noticed that it was strange, but we didn't want to make it a big deal. He was gone for a while, for at least 15 minutes before returning. Our gay friend later checks his call records and confirmed that an outgoing call did occur to a 415 area code, which is his area code, but only lasted for 2 seconds, despite the fact that he was gone for at least 15 minutes. After dinner, the gay friend, Nick's ex, and I already had plans to study for midterms together on campus. Not too long after we got on campus, our mutual friends who were there at the dinner with us told us that Nicolau was going to campus to confront his ex. According to our mutual friends, Nicolau went to their apartment very heated and said he found proof that I was trying to get at his ex, which is simply not true. You could ask anyone back then. Apparently, according to Nick, a guy and a girl just simply cannot be friends without trying to get at each other. We heavily suspected that during that 15 minutes he was gone to call his mom, he looked through our gay friend's phone and found his messages inviting me to study with him and Nick's ex on campus. I have no idea where he got this idea that I was trying to get at his ex, or he found proof of this. The gay friend, Nick's ex, and I felt like we're being threatened and we're like legitimately scared, like what is he trying to do? Then Nick's ex had the idea to tell her roommate, who was thankfully home at the time, to go into their room and turn on the lights to make it look like she was back home. Not even 10 minutes later, our mutual friends tell us that Nick told them that everything was good because she's back home now. Like, dude, what the fuck? By the way, they're all living on campus at the time, VDC specifically for those of you who are familiar with UCI. I'm mentioning this because VDC is very far away from campus. Anyways, like I said, that's one of many stories that I personally experienced showing just how scary and unsettling his behavior can get. Moving on, within a couple years, Nick has developed this reputation of being a creep and a predator at UCI. Starting with the League of Legends club, then onto Chinese Association, a club for Chinese American students. One such encounter was publicized by a member of CA that I put on screen here. Notice that in this story, Nick Lau tried to minimize Amber's reaction to his harassment when she was clearly not having it. Even making jokes about it, trying to minimize the harassment. It has gone to the point where some people felt it was necessary to warn incoming freshmen of his behavior, because freshmen were typically his targets. Keep this in mind because it's going to be an ongoing theme in this video. After graduating from UCI, he naturally started getting involved in the EDM scene where he continued his disgusting behavior, offering exclusive access to artists in exchange for sexual favors, free tickets to events to probably buy favors, and offering to be someone's Adidas fairy, among many others. His reputation became further developed and even landed him in a Chinese newspaper. While we're on the topic of Nick Lau's character, we absolutely cannot ignore his narcissism. I willingly admit the main reason why I wanted to make this video is because I saw this. This screenshot triggered me so much. I'm just... Be right back. Anyways, this guy's head is so far up his own ass that the bump in his throat is literally his own fucking nose. This guy seriously thinks there's a positive correlation between your own perceived success and the amount of sexual assault allegations against you? Seriously? By the way, if you've never sexually assaulted anyone in your life, you're more successful than this scumbag, just by virtue of being a non-negative contribution to society. I think even he realizes how fucking stupid this sounds, because later on someone called him out on this bullshit of an excuse, and he has the audacity to say, I never did. Just suggested that jealousy might be one of the reasons why people are accusing me. Like, no, you point blank said it because you were successful. You never suggested it, you never guessed it, you never theorized it, never thought it. You said it straight up, plain and simple, fucking own it. By the way, if you unironically say you're humble, you're not.
Humility. I like it. I too am extraordinarily humble.
This is one of many contradictions you will find in his defense, which I hope many of you guys can detect. If you read through all of his posts, which I did, then I'm sure you can just sense how big his ego is. Literally everything he types just reeks of narcissism. There's a difference between being confident and being cocky, and he clearly leans towards the latter. I legitimately cannot think of anyone who is more narcissistic. Like, truly, I can't think of a single person. Also, maybe it's just me, but it seems like he's really enjoying all the attention he's been getting. Like, enjoying a little bit too much. Watching how he carries himself in his videos remind me of how YouTubers vlog, acting like he's some sort of influencer. There are times where it feels like he's trying to promote his platform more so than trying to defend himself. Things like telling people to check out his Instagram page, while on his Instagram he's telling people to check out his Facebook, saying stuff like, you post live. As an added bonus, the next few lucky people get a personalized post-side reply from me. Thanks for following along. Hope to see you guys soon. Like, no, you don't. You don't want to see us soon. We definitely don't want to see you soon, because that means you done fucked up again. Regardless, his entire Instagram post, the one that he wants everyone to see, is open to the public. So you can see for yourself and come to your own conclusion. Assuming he didn't block, which is something he does to a lot of people, I think it's pretty fair to say that any normal person who has never heard of Nick Lau can sense how big his ego is. I think that's a pretty fair assessment to make. Also notice how he's taking every opportunity to assert just how righteous he is. I stayed silent to protect those around me. I do it for my friends and family. Also, while we're at it, he has a bad habit of injecting completely irrelevant information to, my guess, to flaunt his wealth or his clout. Like, we don't need to know Taeyong was in your profile picture. Don't drag his name into this. I know another Big Bang member you definitely would have gone along well with. We also don't need to know your shoe collection is worth more than $20,000, or that you don't like Starbucks, or your hands are shaking because you're so overwhelmed with emotion so you decide to include this blurry picture, you overly dramatic ass. Or it was all candid, no retakes. Or you went to the gym and lost weight while working full time. By the way, everyone does that. I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with Fedmeister, a once pretty prominent content creator who also sexually assaulted and harassed and gaslit many of his victims. Nick mentioning the gym reminded me so much of Fed that I see a lot of parallels between the two. Anyways, no one cares about these minute details. Just make your case, make your point, and move on. I realize I'm just nitpicking at this point, and there's so much more I want to say about Nick Lau as a person, like misleading people into believing his over-exaggerated or straight-up false accomplishments. Like misleading people into thinking he won some lawsuit when it was a check from a class action lawsuit from Adidas worth $60, or that this article was debunked when this was just a screenshot from the UCI subreddit. Not sure why he is celebrating as if the UCI subreddit is some supreme authority with enough credibility to conclusively debunk an article, when he probably bullied or threatened some poor Reddit admin into putting that tag. Not to mention the blatant misogyny. But I want to keep this video relatively concise without leaving too many stones unturned while trying to maintain neutrality to the best of my ability. I know I already failed, but I'm trying my best. He makes it very difficult. But by now, I hope you guys have a pretty good idea of what Nick Lau is like as a person. Regarding his post about Jenelle, I read it all. Even all 50 fucking photos attached to individual comments, some of which are out of order, instead of dumping it all into one single image or link or something. I question why he even posted this in the first place in response to Justin Chow's original accusation at Hard Summer. Actually, we do know he wants to establish his credibility by, I guess, trying to ruin someone else's. Even someone who had nothing to do with what happened at Hard Summer. Maybe he should listen to his own advice instead of dragging someone who had nothing to do with this specific incident. But to his credit, the evidence is pretty damning, and no one is going to disagree with him that cheating while in a consensual, monogamous relationship or marriage is wrong. But that is not what this argument is about. This argument was supposed to be about Nick Lau's alleged behavior at Hard Summer 2021, not his previous relationship. There's not much more to say about this, but there are a couple things that really rub me the wrong way. First, his claim that mental health awareness is so important to him. Yeah, I'm sure he really cared about the mental health of the girls that he harassed and assaulted. Sure, maybe he cares about his own mental health, which I guess wouldn't make that statement wrong. He also claimed that the reason why the entire Moving Castle group publicly mentioned or subtweeted at him is because they supported an extramarital affair. Or maybe it's because they realized Nick is just a fucking scumbag who would very shortly get exposed in that Olivia Chang post that went viral a couple months later. He also low-key threw shade at anyone who loves Studio Ghibli movies while preemptively trying to defend himself by saying, I enjoy the film. That's like saying, oh, I'm not racist, I have black friends. Also, the whole accidentally registering Jenelle's wallet tile, a Bluetooth tracker to his phone, very fucking shady thing to do. But you know what? Let's just let this slide, because even by Jenelle's own admission, it was an accident. Despite the fact that this is very in line with what he would actually do, i.e. be a fucking stalker. I also like to point out the irony in Nick saying, congrats buddy, we're not in high school, and yeah, we're not. So stop messaging high school girls. Speaking of which, I do want to mention one thing that I feel like not enough people are talking about for some reason. Jenelle has a late birthday, October to be in fact, and was 19 years old in 2018 by the time their 2-year relationship ended by his own account. By the way, we did not need to know it was physically intimate. Like, what are you trying to do? Make yourself look cool because you have sex? Hey guys, I fuck bitches. Am I cool yet? Is it not apparent that I engage in sexual intercourse with bitches? Am I cool yet, guys? Because I fuck bitches, okay? Via girls are so horny, dude. I would know because I fuck bitches. Yeah, am I cool yet, guys? Shut up, dude. By his own multiple accounts, whatever relationship he had with Jenelle lasted around 2 years. If this relationship ended on April 17, 2018, when she was 19 years old. 19 minus 2-year relationship equals 17? You better hope by 2 years, he actually means less than 18 months. Because using basic math, anyone would realize she turned 18 in October of 2016. And even if you did, that's still shady as fuck for someone who's supposed to have already graduated college, assuming a traditional 4-year course. By the way, I do recall back then around 2015, 2016, let's say 2016 for Nick's sake, I did hear from the grapevine that Nick Lau was texting a high school, which would be confirmed by the story. Let's move on to Loyce and her alleged claims of rape. This is probably the most serious part of the video, and I'll be voicing my opinions here and there, but I strongly encourage everyone to come to their own conclusions on this specific matter. Loyce herself even said this. So Nick has stated that Loyce straight up lied about the encounter and revealed heavily redacted police reports, something that he has been campaigning around as like the biggest piece of evidence to defend himself during this whole ordeal. I'll be having the police report on screen the entire time for cross-reference. To his credit, I truly believe that these are real police reports, and I nor anyone else should have any reason to believe that these have been doctored or edited in any way. I read the provided police report, and again, I remind you, just my own personal opinion, it just reaffirms my belief that a rape did occur, and here's my explanation why. Everything that Loyce shared in her story about this particular encounter with Nick Lau 3 years ago in that Next Shark article aligns with everything that was documented in the police report. By the way, Nick keeps trying to discredit Next Shark as an amateur, unreliable news source because they ask for donations. Like fucking Wikipedia also asks for donations too. Whether or not you agree or disagree, I won't argue with anyone about that. What's actually important in that article is the content. I don't care about the little bits and pieces that they wrote themselves in between the screenshots and the testimony. Like if you have a rock, it doesn't matter if you gift wrap it, if you put it in a box, in your frame it, or whatever. No matter how you present this rock, it's still a fucking rock, and that doesn't change. Just like the stories that those girls shared in that article. Back to the police report. Nick Lau says that none of the details of his account has changed since 2017. Neither did Loyce, despite the fact that Nick has repeatedly called Loyce a liar. Mostly everything both Nick and Loyce said were in alignment with each other and the police report. Going to Costco, Nick playing Overwatch, eating the fucking type of alcohol they're drinking, Loyce becoming hysterical, to the arm scratches, Nick calling her crazy, and to her fleeing the house. The biggest point of contention, and obviously the most important one, is whether or not the sexual encounter was consensual. By the way, this occurred in April of 2017, which would still be within that 2-year relationship window he had with Jenelle. In Nick's defense, he did say they were together unofficially, so technically Nick would be single, but I am curious as to why Nick would willingly hook up with someone with or without consent if he loved and cared so much for Jenelle. Anyways, to Nick's credit, he does have on record the sex being consensual, which I'm not too sure if this is Nick stating this or if the police deemed it to be consensual for the police report. And Loyce herself stating she was not raped. Now, I won't blame anyone for taking this at face value because it is an official police report. But I also take into consideration that Loyce herself, 3 years ago, before this police report was ever released to the public by Nick Lau himself, stated that details got mixed up at the time and that she essentially gaslit herself into thinking it was her fault and not Nick's. A very common thing to happen to rape victims, by the way. She never made an attempt to backtrack on anything she said. In fact, she doubled down on her original stance by saying she truly felt like her words were misquoted and taken out of context, and that she has nothing to hide. Nowhere does she admit she lied or felt sorry for sharing her story, which for some reason, Nick saw this as an admission of guilt. Nowhere in this image, which is from Nick's story by the way, who took a screenshot of Loyce's story, does Loyce say she's sorry. What does he mean by you're only sorry because you finally got properly called out for lying and were proven so? Everything Loyce said here is very reasonable. Don't send death threats, especially to friends and family who are not involved. I don't know why Nick thinks this is her admission of guilt. Like, why is he creating his own narrative? In this clip, he says that Loyce subtweeted about him.
It's surprising how someone can go from subtweeting me with something about not taking responsibility for someone in his late 20s or something to, you know, doing the complete opposite in a short span of 24 hours. Loyce, my team will be in touch with yours. Your supposed team, anyway.
When Loyce herself said it wasn't a subtweet. Like, does this guy even read? Well, apparently not, because he thought Justin Chow's apology video was a legitimate apology video. he even admitted himself he didn't bother watching the video. Also, I'd like to point out that Nick seems to recall that Loyce claimed she had a condom inside of her for 3 weeks. That's incorrect. She said roughly a week to 10 days, which does happen, by the way. Also, his video of Loyce's assault, which I'll have on repeat here, because you might miss it the first time, or if you just blink. This is considered assault? Like, sure, maybe by like a textbook definition, but like, I don't fucking know. But this is his video proof of what irate, uncooperative behavior looks like. You know that this is probably the worst part of the video, and that's it? And he's campaigning this around as an incriminating piece of evidence against Loyce? Like, seriously? Regardless, the police report is a solid defense, and I will give him credit there. But I do have some things I want to say, and again, this is just my opinion. First, which is probably irrelevant to this whole case in the first place, but I just want to get this off my chest. For being the son of the former police chief of San Francisco, he likes to bring up the fact that his father has long sworn to justice, as if the police are immune to corruption. And it's impossible for police reports to be inaccurate. Now, I have no reason to believe the specific police report to be inaccurate, other than potentially misquoting Loyce's words by her own account. But I just want to get that off my chest again. Second, when I read this police report, it just reaffirmed everything that I believe happened. A rape victim reacting how you would expect someone to react when they realize they got raped. Hysterical, irate, and clearly distressed. You have to ask yourself this: why would Loyce wake up with such a reaction? And I feel like not enough people are talking about that. Third, the police report did say Loyce was not sober at the time. And I'm sure most people by now should realize that when you're drunk, you're not in the proper state of mind to give consent. Yes, people can be blackout drunk and still act somewhat functional, especially in a sexual context. But that's up to you to kind of like navigate that. Make sure that you get consent properly. Fourth, the police are notoriously bad at handling sexual assault. A lot of instances of sexual assault don't get reported to the police because a lot of people know nothing will come out of it. Because unlike other crimes, how can you prove sexual assault happened? It's not like other crimes. When you murder someone, you produce a dead body. When you assault someone, there are bruises and injury. When you steal, you produce stolen goods. When someone is constantly groping women, slapping their asses, grabbing their boobs, or pulling down their dress, how do you prove that? Like, what's Nick gonna do? Ungrab their boobs, unslap their ass? That's not how this works. Like, unless there happens to be like a camera at the right place at the right time, you just cannot. Obviously, more severe cases, such as rape, can produce physical evidence in the form of, DNA, or in this case, a used condom. But as Loyce herself said, she disposed of the used condom, which she regrets to this day, along with not using a rape kit. But as Loyce herself said, now you may say, oh well, isn't that convenient? And which I will admit it is, but I will personally not let that take anything away from her experience. Again, my own opinion. There's also a lot of stigma against victims. People are gonna ask, oh, were you drinking? Like, why didn't you fight back? You should have known. Like, it doesn't matter if you think these questions are valid or not. It's not illegal to be a victim of sexual assault. What is illegal is sexually assaulting people. You could make the argument that it's stupid to put yourself in this situation in the first place. Sure, but you have to ask yourself this: in what world is it unreasonable or crazy to expect someone, especially someone who you thought was your friend, to not rape or to not sexually assault? Is that suddenly too much to ask now? Moving on, in most cases of sexual assault, it will almost always boil down to an argument of he said this, she said that. But like I said before on record, if I were to pick a side, I will usually pick the side of the accuser, especially if there are dozens of them. Because if all these allegations were lies, I would rather be caught defending a bunch of liars than for all, or even just some of them to be true and be caught defending a rapist. Not to mention, if there are dozens, even over 100 allegations against someone, if just one of them is true, they're still guilty of a crime. His attempt to defend himself, trying to discredit 2 people out of dozens who shared their stories, is the same energy as saying, I only sexually assaulted 8 out of 10 girls who accused me. I'm a victim of misrepresentation. Girls can lie too. Now, if Nick had an upstanding reputation and was not already known for preying and sexually assaulting girls, then I could understand the hesitation to believe this rape accusation. I would be hesitant too if I wasn't already aware of who he is and firsthand witness how scary he can become. I will take this opportunity to acknowledge that yes, false accusations do happen, and yes, it is something that should be considered every time a serious allegation like this comes out. Like Jasmina Bay? Fuck that bitch. Juanetta Gibson? The bitch who sent Brian Banks to jail for false rape accusation, trebuchet. Nick is trying to make himself look like Brian Banks when he's more like this, but looks like this. You can even arguably say that false accusations can be more damaging because it can not only ruin the life of the accused, it takes away from actual victims. You can sort of compare this whole situation to the whole Deshaun Watson case that is ongoing. I'm not going to go into too many specific details because it will be exhausting. I don't want to extend the length of the video more than it has to. But to give some context, Deshaun Watson is a top young NFL talent who has been touted for having great character. A top 10 quarterback in the league who does a lot of charity work for his community. Again, just to emphasize his supposed good reputation. There are parallels, not about their character, about the situation. Like the fact that multiple women, 22 to be exact, came out accusing Deshaun Watson of sexual harassment or assault. These lawsuits came not too long after Deshaun Watson recently signed a 4-year, $160 million contract. See where I'm getting at here? This is not a too uncommon occurrence in professional sports where people attempt these money grab lawsuits and athletes tend to settle these cases privately, aka give them money. So yes, I do acknowledge that allegations can be motivated for selfish reasons. So in Deshaun Watson's case, in my personal opinion, the timing of these lawsuits, along with the fact that these allegations seem out of character of him, which I don't fucking know. I don't know the guy personally. He's very suspicious. But also at the same time, it is very hard to ignore 22 different allegations. We're not talking about just 1 or 2 here. We're talking about 22. But unlike Nick Lau, there is potential monetary motivation for these lawsuits against Deshaun Watson. Is it plausible that some of these women are after his money? Sure. Is it also plausible that these women just want to hold Deshaun Watson accountable for his actions despite his status as a celebrity athlete? Yes. What motivation do dozens of girls have against Nick Lau? They're not after his money or his $20,000 shoe collection. Like, what is more believable? That Loyce and Jenelle felt embarrassed about what they did and used Olivia Chang as an opportunity to scapegoat Nick, again reinforcing his own narcissistic belief that apparently dozens and dozens of women have nothing in common with each other than their experiences with Nick. Each independently decided to band together and take down one insignificant non-celebrity? Or Loyce and Jenelle finally found the courage to open up about their own experiences after hearing so many other girls have had similar ones. Well, that depends on who you're willing to believe. They, and I'm sure many others, myself included, just want him to be held accountable for the things he has done and the things he'll most likely do in the future. Let's say you unconditionally believe in the police report, which again I think is a fair stance to take. Let's say the rape accusation is indeed false, which again I personally still believe is true. How do you explain the dozens of other girls who came out with their stories of Nick Lau? So at worst, Nick Lau is a rapist with borderline pedophilic tendencies, or at best, he's a perverted scumbag who likes to habitually grope women and has borderline pedophilic tendencies. Speaking of lawsuits, a common tactic that Nick Lau likes to use to keep his victims silent is threatened lawsuits. Like, the guy apparently loves to sue. And the worst part is that it actually probably works. Understandably, people don't want to get involved in lawsuits. They're long, tedious, draining, and expensive. Not to mention that random people were claiming he won his last slander case, which further intimidated more people. This guy even thought he won 30 of them. Fucking 30. Like, where did this number come from? By the way, what slander case is he talking about? The public is allowed to look at court records. So I looked up all case types in Orange County. Anyone could do this, by the way. You just have to pay $1 for each inquiry. Tied to his name from 2014 to 2021, and there is one case, and it's for fucking speeding tickets. This is also backed up by someone else who checked the court dockets on both the state and federal level, and a slander or libel or defamation case was never filed by anyone under the name Nicholas Lau. So unless this slander case, much less fucking 30 of them, occurred outside of California or was settled privately, which you cannot say you won, by the way, he straight up lied about winning a slander case. Also, I find it kind of interesting that in his latest round of defense, he made no mention of winning a lawsuit against defamation or slander or libel, despite his own claim that he takes libel very seriously. He makes no mention of any lawsuits, which would probably help his defense a lot if they did happen. Knowing him, this is something he definitely would have brought up, but there's no mention of it at all. But back then in 2018, he would often threaten lawsuits. Very interesting, don't you think? Intimidation is often used by assaulters to silence their victim, which is ironic because Nicolau keeps trying to play victim, claiming he was silenced and his voice was taken away from him. Now, echoing back to the beginning of the video where I referenced one of Nick's stories where he self-righteously proclaimed that he never shares nudes because he respects girls, I could say that this claim is 100% wrong because I have personally seen one of these pictures. And it was very disturbing because it was someone that I knew personally and did not expect. And I doubt even to this day, this person knows her pictures were being shared by Nick or that I saw them. She was a freshman at the time. Notice a pattern here? The reason why I came into contact with this picture is because back in 2018, I immediately offered help to Olivia and to whoever wanted to gather evidence for whatever legal action they wanted to take. In doing so, that is when I saw the picture. In the end, they decided to not take any legal action, my disappointment, but I understand why, as Loyce said herself. That is also one of the reasons why there's so many girls who want to remain silent or anonymous out of fear and embarrassment that Nick would release these pictures. Also, there is a claim that Nicolau blackmailed 10 girls, threatening to reveal their nudes if they got involved. But very important to note that this is an unsubstantiated claim by someone who's not directly involved in any of the story, but indirectly involved through Olivia Chang, who was his girlfriend at the time. But I would not be surprised if this is true at all. Also, I feel like this is a good time to bring up why Nicolau thought it was weird that Shannon Hung wanted to get involved. Well, maybe it's because of this fucking weird and creepy encounter that you thought was not problematic or you thought you didn't offend her at all. Like, who the fuck does this? Screenshotted someone's snap store of themselves laying in bed and try to make it look like they hooked up? Even if it's an attempt at humor, really shitty and cringy humor by the way, it's still fucking creepy. It's really predatory and I don't know how anyone can defend this type of behavior, seriously. I also have permission to share this one story I learned about very recently because people started talking about Nicolau again from a friend whose identity I'm not going to reveal out of respect for her privacy and by her request. Now, I would describe this person to be pretty desensitized and jaded to these sorts of encounters because, like a lot of girls, she has been objectified and harassed many times. But despite that, she said that Nicolau was the one person she had to physically push off of her and the one person she was genuinely scared of. Again, another 18-year-old, grade freshman, again, trying to lure someone in with his self-inflated connections, and again, trying to get them drunk, coincidentally with Sirach again, to have sex with them. Also, I'm not sure if you noticed, Nicolau has never publicly apologized for anything. In fact, he is maintaining innocence against all accusations. By the way, he keeps contradicting himself, saying, I never have, I was never added from the start because I'm innocent. Then immediately saying, I'm not completely innocent myself, or I aim to address everything, whether it's somewhat true or completely false. So which one is it? Is Nick completely innocent, or does he admit to some of his fault? I'm going to assume the former, since he makes more claims about him being completely innocent and would have admitted to anything and everything had it been true, or turned himself in had he done anything wrong. These are his words, not mine. He also keeps trying to discredit everyone else's claims, accusing them of being doctored, faked, taken completely out of context, or straight up lies. If you want to remain neutral in this entire ordeal and want to question the legitimacy or the integrity of any or all of these claims from the accusers, then it's only appropriate you do the same thing to him. But by now, I'm sure you've noticed a pattern of contradiction on his end. By the way, he keeps saying he has never ran and he's always been here.
I've never hid or ran away from anybody. I'm here, I always have been.
That's false. He did run away and he did hide. He even tried to go by a different name, Elliot to be exact. For someone who claims to be so proud of who he is, why would he use a different one? Again, I'm still unclear if he's trying to maintain complete innocence or not. I like to bring up this claim that the difference between him and everyone else is that he owns up to, take responsibility, and admit everything he and/slash or do, whether he is right or wrong. No, the difference between him and most people is that when decent people admit their wrongdoings, they actively make changes to correct their problems and make sure they never manifest themselves again. That is called growth. Something that he has clearly not demonstrated for at least 8 years now. By the way, you don't get to determine yourself whether or not you've become a good person, or you've matured, or you've experienced growth. No matter how badly you want to proclaim so yourself, that is determined by your peers, not you. While he has never publicly apologized for anything, I will admit this, he does apologize privately, even back then in 2014, when he admitted to cheating on his then ex by groping, aka sexually assaulting, another friend's breast. He also apologized to this particular person, admitting that there are no excuses and that what he did was wrong and failed to be respectful. Pretty fair apology, I would say, until he would continue his problematic behavior and assault Olivia Chang just a couple months later, not accounting for any potential victims in between. Every time someone confronts him about his actions, he either deflects blame or apologizes to them in private. To be fair, those are like the only things he can do. The biggest issue I have is that he apologizes, but then proceeds to harass and assault more women. It really makes us think if he really is sorry. Like, is he actually sorry for groping your boobs? Or is he sorry to himself that he can get into your pants? Oh man, now I can't get to that pussy anymore. Gotta move on to the next one. The thing is that this actually does work, and this usually serves as a form of closure, which is what a lot of people want. I actually got into an argument with a friend recently. She was a victim of Nick, but when she confronted him about it, he owned up to it, apologized, and vowed to be better. Understandably, she got her closure and moved on from it completely. She might have forgiven him and accepted his apology, but she won't forget, which I'm sure a lot of girls have done. But the thing is, until what point do we stop buying into his bullshit apology? He's been apologizing in private for years now, and yet he continues to act like this. By this point, it certainly feels like he's just following a script every time he apologizes to someone. Admittedly, most of these stories are relatively minor. This is probably why most of these girls choose to simply move on or even forgive Nick. But does that absolve him for everything he's done? Hell no. Most people won't suffer long-lasting trauma from a slap on the ass. But that's not the point. The point is that these events are recurring and is generally an indicator of just how terrible of a person Nick Lau is. I don't want to minimize anyone's encounters with Nick Lau, but as Amber herself said, some cases are far more severe than hers, and that she shares her experience in hopes that it truly reflects how horrible of a person Nick is, as it is only a piece of a larger puzzle involving other victim stories. I've been keeping tabs on people who have been showing Nick Lau any form of sympathy or support or encouragement, whether it's liking his comments, showing love to his comments, or whatever. I admit this is really petty of me, but when it comes to Nick Lau, I have absolutely no shame. So if you are one of these people, I would love to have an honest, amicable conversation with you, because I genuinely want to know how anyone can still support this guy after so many years of problematic behavior. Well, most of you. Some of you guys can fuck right off. Which, by the way, I'd like to bring up this one comment for someone who decided to speak up for Nick Lau because it really irked me. Like, good for you. You had one non-negative encounter with Nick Lau where you guys just hugged consensually and he gave you a fake VIP pass. He didn't do anything extraordinary here. You guys just said hi to each other and he gave you a fake VIP pass. Which, by the way, does anyone else think that this is a fucking weird thing to do at festivals? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't go to raves, but is this something people regularly do? Give away fake VIP passes? Like, I really hope he told people beforehand that these are fake, which I doubt. Anyways, is the standard that fucking low now? Are we setting the bar that fucking low where if Nick Lau doesn't grope you, that's supposed to exemplify how good of a person he is? You know, I'm sure Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby had plenty of good encounters with women they didn't take advantage of. By the way, one of which is now set free because of our great legal system. Nick Lau's excuse that he would have been in jail by now if any of these allegations were true is so stupid and flawed. But what can we expect from someone who is so proud of being the son of a former police chief? If you reached this point of the video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. There's so many more things I do want to say, but I don't want to oversaturate this video. Despite that, I felt like I said most of the things I wanted to say. I was hoping Nick would have released his fourth and final post that was supposed to address all of his allegations by now, so that I could have the opportunity to review it and react to it before making this video. He's been teasing me a lot, but it's been more than 3 weeks, and there's just no indicator that he's working on this. Like, he's too busy eating teriyaki chicken and playing League of Legends. I decided to just go ahead and make this video. I would not be surprised at all if his final post were to just address the people he specifically mentioned in his Facebook post, as if his attempt to dismiss a few allegations would completely prove his innocence. I also would not be surprised that if he watches this video, and I doubt he'll watch the whole thing because even he admitted himself he didn't watch Justin Chow's video, that he'll try to come after me, but I'm not fucking scared. This video will stay up no matter what, unless Facebook or YouTube forcibly takes it down. Again, I made this video as an easy way for anyone who is unfamiliar with Nick Lau to be caught up because it bothered me seeing a lot of misinformation being tossed around and context being lost in the comments of a lot of these posts. And here's hoping I don't have to make a follow-up or part 2 to this video. Thank you again so much for watching, and before I go, I would like to leave you off with one final clip from Nick Lau himself.
And before I go, if you think that me dragging a liar, a false accuser, an abuser of social stigma, and frankly someone who's just straight up delusional and crazy's name through the mud is wrong by defending myself, are you sure I'm the one that needs the reality check?